In this video, I will share with you some tips for dealing with tight outer hips, including the IT band that doesn't involve rolling or pain. Hi, I'm Lenore. I help people reduce stiffness and pain through increasing their body awareness, because you can't change what you're not aware of. This helps improve function so that people can continue to do the activities they love. I'll share my 3 favorite movements for releasing outer hips, key activations in 3 yoga poses, and ways to incorporate these into your daily life. Okay, so the outer hip muscles create abduction of the leg. So this is the movement that they create. They pull the leg out to the side. These muscles include the gluteus maximus, medius, and minimus, as well as something called the tensor fascia lata, or TFL. So the gluteus maximus and the TFL both feed into the iliotibial tract, or the IT band, which runs all the way down to below the knee. So this is a layer of thick fascia, which creates stability for the hip and the knee. So this can get tight in a lot of people and cause pain. That is usually a symptom though, and it's compensating for a lack of strength or control of the muscles of the outer hip, and maybe even in the waist on the same side. So let's explore that. Okay, so for this movement, we're going to be lying on our side. Support your head with your bottom arm. You want your hips stacked and extend the top leg. You want the foot and leg to be in line with the hip. Your foot may or may not touch the floor. Flex that foot and then start to lift the leg up. So using your hand, feel your outer hip muscles working here, as well as your IT band contracting, getting harder, and then slowly lower, releasing those muscles little by little until the leg comes down, and then you can let the leg relax. So let's try that again. Extend the leg, flex the foot, slowly lift the leg up, feeling the muscles working. So by paying attention to the sensation and moving slowly, you're actually using the cortex part of your brain, which is what controls the muscles. And then slowly let that release. So we're changing, try that again. We're changing the neural pathways from the brain to the muscles so that we have better control and function of the muscles. This helps lengthen them back to their natural state, especially if they're tight. So let's add something else to this movement. So you're bringing your leg up as before, outer hip muscles working, and now add a hike of your hip. So the waist muscles work to do that. They pull the pelvis up towards the ribs and then slowly release the waist muscles. You'll feel the pelvis kind of roll back to neutral, and then let the top leg release slowly, feeling these outer hip muscles relax and lengthen, and then let the leg rest. So let's try that again. Leg straightens, lift it on up, outer hip muscles working, then waist muscles contract. You'll feel your other side of your waist lengthen into the floor, and then start to release the waist muscles. These waist muscles coordinate with the outer hip muscles, and then slowly release that back down, letting the leg relax. So you might notice with each repetition that the foot is starting to get closer and closer to the floor. This means we're actually lengthening the outer hip muscles, which is what we want. Go ahead and lie on your back, extend the legs, and then notice the difference in how your hip feels compared to the other hip. And then you can do the other side. For this next movement, lie on your back with your knees bent. Bring your hands into your hip crease and just lift one foot off the floor. Feel your hip flexors firing You can try that with the other side if you want. So we're just doing this for awareness because we don't want our hip flexors to fire during this, but we want to find them first. So bring your left ankle onto your right knee. And what we're going to do using our outer hip muscles here is gently press the knee away from the chest and then slowly release. So it's a very small movement. And with the hands in your hip crease, you're just checking to make sure they're not firing as we do this movement. So gentle pressing of the knee away from you, using your outer hip muscles, and then a slow release. Make sure the pelvis isn't moving here and that there's not any contraction in your low back or in your jaw or anywhere else other than your left outer hip. So after doing that several times, slow contraction and slow release, you can uncross, extend the legs, and observe the sensation and difference of your left hip versus your right. That will give you good feedback as to the benefits of this movement. Then you can do the other side. Okay, for this next movement, you're going to require a block, or you can use a stack of books. So bring one foot onto the block. You have your heel on the block so your toes can hang over and then come on up. You can use a wall for stability. We're not so concerned with balance in this one. So begin by just letting your outer hip relax. The pelvis will kind of tip and your other leg will be dangling, or maybe even the toes touch the floor. So outer hip is now relaxed. What we're going to do is squeeze this hip in by pressing down through the foot on the block, through the heel. That will contract and pull the pelvis down towards the standing leg. The other hip will hike as a result, and then slowly release these outer hip muscles here. And as a result, they will release the pelvis back into its position where those outer hip muscles are relaxed. So press down through the heel of the block. You'll feel those muscles contract. Use your hands if you need to feel the sensation. The other hip will rise as a result, and then slowly release that hip, and the pelvis will be released. So same thing as before, you want to move slowly so that you're giving an opportunity for your brain to really pay attention to these movements, which will actually change the neural pathway of those muscles. And then come off the block and just notice the different sensation in your hips after doing that. A common pattern in Warrior 2 is for the front knee to wing in. To self-correct this, bring your hand on your outer thigh and press the thigh out into the hand, and the hand resists. This will line up the front knee so it tracks over the toes. Here's another angle for you to see. So we've got Warrior 2, the knee tends to wing in. So hand on outer thigh, press the thigh into the hand, and that lines things up. Now let's explore outer hips in pigeon pose. So come into your pigeon pose. So we can be passive here, which will stretch your outer hip, or we can create a facilitated stretch by pressing the front knee down into the floor. This will lift your hips up a little bit, but what we're doing is we're activating a muscle while it's being lengthened. This is called a facilitated stretch, and it will help lengthen the muscle even more. It sends a signal to the brain that there's tension and to relax the muscle a little bit. Another great example of using the outer hips is in half moon pose. So if we come into our half moon pose, the top hip is abducting to lift that leg higher, and then the standing leg is also working to open the hip by squeezing in with the standing leg hip. When you relax the standing leg hip, the hip will drop. So pressing through the outer right heel or standing foot heel will open the hip, and there you have it. Ta-da! So how can we integrate and incorporate those movements into our daily life? Well, every day we are walking, sometimes running, and that is when the outer hip muscles are being used. Now, they are being used, and that means contracting and lengthening. So what happens with people who have tight outer hips is that there's not a lot of movement going on. So in walking, I want you to notice how when you walk, how the hips alternate, pushing out to the side and then back in. So when the hip, let's use this hip as an example, when it's relaxed, it kicks out to the side. When it's contracted, it pulls the pelvis towards that leg and the other hip lifts. What this does is it allows that free leg to step forward. So we've got this kind of alternating of the hips when you're walking, much like a runway model. But so use that awareness when you're either walking or running and feel the outer hip muscles both working and releasing. Really important to feel both and allow both to happen. What sometimes happens is we've got very stiff robotic walking, which means the hip muscles are always tight and on. They're never experiencing that relaxed feeling. So it's important to have both. If you've enjoyed this video and found the tips helpful, please drop me a like or consider subscribing to my channel. And I look forward to seeing you next time.